let's start.
Good morning and welcome to our event, 10 Years of Femicide at UNODC. It's great to have you here all. And my name is Karin Bruckmüller. I'm from the Sigmund Freud University in Vienna. And we have a faculty of law, of psychology, and of medicine. So all three disciplines are always involved in the topic we are speaking about today. And it's a great honor for us to host this event. And it's also a great honor for us to have here the ambassador of Spain, Ambassador Esther Monterrubio. And she is here in Austria since September 2020, and she is the ambassador and permanent representative of Spain to the United Nations and also other international organizations here in Vienna. And it's important that we don't lose any time, so I will hand over to our moderator. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Karen, for your kind words of introduction. Spain approved last year a strategy for feminist foreign policy. This strategy aims to translate into our foreign action what is already a Spanish government national priority, a firm commitment for feminism and equality. This strategy defines as one of the most important lines of action in our foreign policy, defined against any form of violence against women and girls, for which femicide is the most brutal manifestation. So it is a great honor to participate as moderator in this webinar on 10 years of femicide work at UNODC. My gratitude for the invitation to the co-organizers and sponsor of this event, particularly to the International Association for the Advancement of Innovative Approaches to Global Changes and to the Alliance of NGOs on Crime and Prevention and Criminal Justice, the Soroptimists International, UNS, and the Sigmund Freud University for its generous hospitality to host us today. 10 years ago, a number of organizations of civil society with the backing of a few countries met here in Vienna in the first international symposium to bring to attention of states and call for action to combat femicide. The Vienna Declaration on Femicide managed to set a definition of femicide and also a series of demands for states to fight against it, from prevention to prosecution. It was followed by the GA Resolution 68/191 of December 2013, taking action against gender-related violence of women and children and girls. We gather here today to analyze changes occurred in this decade, the work that has already been done, particularly in UNODC, and how best we can continue our work. Because unfortunately, we still need action. I will mention only one fact. As the UNODC report on GBV states, 47,000 women and girls were killed by intimate partners or another family members in 2020. That means the report continues that a woman or girl is killed by someone in her own family every 11 minutes. In COVID times, home have become the most dangerous place for women. Femicide is increasing. Is it a global crime that is present in all countries, and it very often continues going unpunished. We have a moral call to do all we can to eradicate GBV. There is still a lot to do. Yesterday, at the inauguration session of the CCPCJ, the Executive Director of UN Women stressed two important elements for our work ahead. The need to reinforce data This has been a priority in which states and UNODC have to keep on working. The more data we have, the better we can adapt our policies against this crime. And she also underlined the need to cooperate with the CCPCJ within their common responsibilities. Combat femicide and the impunity of the perpetration is a common endeavor. It affects our societies as a whole. We need the support of our citizens. That's why I would like to say a word to recognize the special role that civil society plays to tackle this problem. Thank you very much for helping us. Today's meeting will provide us an opportunity to discuss possible solutions, new strategies, and to promote greater awareness of these crimes against women and girls. Before we begin, I would like to thank all the panelists for their participation here today and to kindly ask them to keep their intervention within the framework time that has been allocated to each of you, which I think it is around 7-8 minutes. At the same time, we will collect all the questions we receive through the chat, and we will pick up some of them in order to be able to answer that at the end of our event today. So without any delay, I'm so sorry because I think I was a bit long in my initial intervention. I will give the floor to our first panelist, who is Elisa Nieto. It is a 19-year experienced Spanish civil servant. She has been specialized in gender, mainly public policies for gender equality, gender in development, on gender-based violence. And she works from a feminist perspective. And right now, she is a senior advisor at the Spanish government delegation against gender-based violence in the Ministry for Equality. So, Elisa, please, could you tell us a bit what Spain is doing in this regard? Thank you.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much, Ambassador Monterrubio. It's a pleasure to be here today with you. I'd like to begin by saying that for Spain, is, as you mentioned, is both an honor and a pleasure to co-host this event. So a big thank to you all co-hosting organizations and countries. And I would also give a special recognition to the efficient work of Uriana Roditi for her patience with us, or especially with me. Thank you so much, and for the organizers. I would also like to congratulate UNODC for its work, its hard work against femicide, and the fact of bringing us together today. I would like to begin by stating the obvious. It is out of question that femicide is the most extreme outcome of gender inequality, is the most horrid consequence of the persistence of patriarchy. Fighting against femicide is a must, so it's indispensable, but it also entails a collective failure. There is something very wrong in our societies if at this stage, the first cause of violent death of women is still gender related, and it's widely unpunished. However, despite our legal and institutional achievement, Spain's reality is no different. 18 years have passed since the approval of our law against gender-based violence, but still, most of the cases remained invisible and unreported. Just to give you a hint, in our country, out of the 44 women killed by their partner or ex-partner during 2021, 35 had never reported. This means that the system was not aware of their existence and couldn't activate the means to help them. Silence and invisibility of femicide is also a pandemic. Nevertheless, we're here today to be realistic, exchange views and good practices, and try to see the glass half full, at least for once. To that aim, I would like to go through the key elements of the Spanish system against femicide. To begin with, it is important to highlight that the institutional progress in the fight against gender-based violence is mainly due to the pivotal role played by the feminist movement internationally and also in my country. In Spain, almost every step taken to highlight is a clear response to the pressure of women organized to claim for justice and rights. The horrid killings of, for example, Encarnación Rubio and other women who had protection orders led to massive demonstrations claiming for a decisive change in the system. This led to the approval of the 2004 law against gender-based violence. It is important to highlight that it is the first law of its kind in the European Union. There are many others that have come afterwards, but it was the first one in 2004. It was approved by all political forces, meaning it was unanimously approved. This is a reality that maybe wouldn't be as easy as it was in 2004 if we had to repeat it right now in the Spanish political context. And it draws a widely comprehensive system. It foresees a three-pillar system, which is the first pillar would be prevention or awareness raising. So it acknowledges the need to change the patriarchal patterns and social norms that affect every aspect of our lives as women, and the importance of the role of education in that path. The second pillar would be the protection and recuperation of the victim. So it recognizes the right to integrated social assistance and all the related rights, especially meant for all women victims of gender-based violence. And the third pillar would be, of course, the prosecution of the crime. Judicial protection. We have a network of courts that are specialized in gender-based violence. Also the police reinforcements with specialized units and risk assessment protocols that have been put in place throughout these years. So these three pillars rely also on 5 key elements. I think this is stating the obvious: the need for coordination, cooperation, specialization, so specialized training is key, multidisciplinary focus, and institutional change. This last element, institutional change, is meant to be fostered by the government delegation against gender-based violence placed at the Ministry of Equality, which I'm representing today. This unit plays an essential role in fostering the implementation of the law and ensuring the continuity of public policies against gender-based violence despite governmental changes. This is, I think, really important. It gives a continuity in these public policies. More recently, in 2016, we could see once again how a horrific episode of violence against women. It was the group rape of a woman in the north of Spain, the Manada case. Maybe you have heard of it. Of course, it's all over the place in all of our countries. But these group rape led to social and political pressure of the feminist movement that achieved another huge step forward: the State Pact against gender-based violence that was approved in the parliament. It aimed at tackling the huge challenges faced by the gender-based violence system after 13 years of the approval of the law. And more importantly, it included for the first time all forms of violence against gender-based violence, against women, together with €1 billion additional budget, which is also very important, as we know, in order to materialize our public policies, the budget. Spain's next challenge, repeatedly pointed out by Grevio, is to enlarge the system in order to include these all forms of violence against women, and not only partner or ex-partner, as our law, our 2004 law included. I'd like to briefly point out some of the measures taken to achieve this enlargement of the concept of gender-based violence. We have a call center, the 016 call center, that gives service to all forms of violence included in the Istanbul Convention. It has received more than 1 million pertinent calls since 2007. It's become a clear reference in our country. It gives information on rights and resources for any victim or any person who needs them. It gives specialized legal counseling. It's important to mention that it is not an instrument to report a criminal case. It's an information service. It's the entry point to the system. It's free and confidential and doesn't leave track in your telephone when you call for the sake of security. Also, we have a new statistical system or approach in order to include all forms of violence against women. We are the first European country or European Union country to build ad hoc statistics to follow up on femicide in the context of the Istanbul Convention. We follow up on partner or ex-partner femicide, family femicide, meaning always with a women victim, but the family femicide can be perpetrated by other members of the family, male members of the family against the woman, sexual femicide, and social femicide, which is also gender related by a person who doesn't have any relationship with the woman. And also we have the Atempro service, which is a mobile phone for women victims of gender-based violence, which will include this wider approach from 2024. It's EU funded. The European funds. Spain is the only country, I believe, that has dedicated some of the resilience, new resilience European funds to fight against gender-based violence. And this is a mobile phone that it's given to the victim, and users can reach 24/7 and a specialized center with staff trained to react quickly and give answers on any situation. It gives remote immediate assistance, and the center calls also the users regularly. It has actually more than 16 or almost 17,000 current users. These are data from December 2029. Also, this wider approach to gender-based violence, including the Istanbul Convention concept, it will also be applied to our electronic devices, also EU funded. This is a highly deterrent effect on perpetrators. It allows to keep track on the breaches of restraining orders and report to the criminal court. It complements the victim-centered approach and improves safety and protection of victims. So this is a device which is put in the perpetrator and also connected to the victim in order to keep her safe. We have right now 2,600 active devices of this kind. And also by the end of 2023, also EU funded, we will have 52 new sexual violence crisis centers that will be all around our regions, and also we'll tackle with a subject that we had identified as a problem until now. So it is clear that in order to end femicide, I think we need at least these three main ingredients, and I'll be wrapping up. The first one is to strengthen the human rights approach of public policies against gender-based violence in line with CEDAW's General Recommendation number 35 and the Istanbul Convention. These are, I think, a clear reference to us, or should be. The second one would be to build comprehensive multi-actor and victim-centered systems. And the third one, and more important, would be to keep on supporting the work of grassroots feminist organizations who have direct and truthful information of the reality of women's victims of this gender crime. I don't want to take more of your time, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Elisa, for your intervention. I will now give the floor to Dubravka Šimonović, who is a diplomat and who is a former rapporteur on violence against women. And she, as I said before, she is a diplomat. She has an extensive career in different postings abroad. And she was the head of the Department of Human Rights at the Ministry for Foreign Affairs in the Republic of Croatia. And right now she is working here at the Ministry Plenipotentiary at the Permanent Mission of the Republic of Croatia to the United Nations since May 1998. And in March 2000, she was elected also chair of the Commission on the Status of Women for a 2-year term. So please, you have the floor. Thank you.
Hello to all. Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador, for this introduction. Let me mention that I'm not working anymore in diplomacy. I was in diplomacy until 2015, when I was appointed as a Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women, and then I left Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so I was only Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women. But let me mention that my time in Vienna was very important with respect to work of the Crime Commission and United Nations on issues related to prevention of femicide. And I'm very glad that this panel is looking at past 10 years of fight against femicide. And in that respect, I would like to mention what my former mandate of a UN Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women, its causes and consequences, did in a past 7 to now in 8 years to combat and prevent femicide, and contribute to the work of the UN in general in this respect. Let me mention that when I was appointed as a Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women, and when I was at that time ambassador in Vienna, the term femicide was not fully accepted by United Nations. It is not in UN terminology, because it is happening gradually, and this acceptance of term femicide is still ongoing. So when we look back into history, we will see that many experts are referring to Diane Russell, who used term femicide in 1974 to call such homicides as femicides in order to pull them out from homicides, because it was clear to show that we are addressing gender-related killings of women. Then if we look at femicides or gender-related killings of women, I have started to use both terms when I was appointed as a Special Rapporteur. We will see that they are falling under definition of gender-based violence against women. And I have prepared a slide that could be showed here, if it is possible, with definition of gender-based violence and definition provided by Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women, but also CEDAW General Recommendation 19, that is saying that basically violence against women is violence committed against a woman because she is a woman or that affects women disproportionately. And based on this, femicide is gender-related killing of a woman because she is a woman or that affects women disproportionately. Then when I was appointed as a Special Rapporteur, we can go immediately to third slide now. Let's go to third one. When I was appointed as a Special Rapporteur, let's go to the next slide, please. Next one. So when I was appointed, my predecessor, Ms. Rashida Manjoo, who was also Special Rapporteur, she started with report on gender-related killing of women. And this is a descriptive term that was used by my predecessor and also by General Assembly resolution that you have mentioned, Madam Ambassador, that are extremely important, that were prepared by the Crime Commission in 2013 and 2015, resolutions on action against gender-based killing of women and girls. And at that time, in 2013 and 15, I was there during elaboration of those resolutions. I participated in elaboration of those resolutions, and later on, from perspective of a Special Rapporteur, I have seen that they're extremely important because they're providing UN General Assembly framework that is calling states to combat gender-based killing of women and girls. But what was missing in those resolutions was was a call that this collection of data should include relationship between the victim and the perpetrator as a key factor for collection and disaggregation of such data. So when I started with Femicide Watch initiative in 2015, I have included this. I'm also very glad that UNODC produced in 2019 specific report in addition to homicide report on gender-related killing of women and girls, and in square brackets it was femicide or feminicide. And now what is new development at the beginning of this year, in March in 2022, United Nations Statistical Commission adopted a statistical framework on gender-related killings, femicide or feminicide, that will really provide at a global level a proper framework for collection of femicide data that is in line with methodology that was proposed by my mandate. Let us now go to next slide on this Femicide Watch initiative. So I have selected femicide as a long-term initiative, what means that for all 6 years while I was a special rapporteur, I have focused on femicide, and I have called states to establish a femicide watch or national body. It could be existing observatory on violence against women, it could be other bodies at the national level that should collect data on gender-related killings of women or femicides based on relationship between the perpetrator and the victim in respect to intimate partner killings, then family-related killings, and other types of killings that are not based on such relationship. And it was clear that states were collecting data on violence against women, but not integrating also data on femicide, so gender-related killings of women, because such data were in a homicide data. So if you look at the country level, you will see that states have homicide data, but they do not include this data in gender-related killings of women data. So in 2016, I have produced report on modalities, how to establish femicide watch and collect such data. And basically it is flexible. It could be also ombudspersons, it could be interdisciplinary bodies. There are a number of NGOs around the world that are now collecting data on gender-related killings of women. And all this is very important because it is giving visibility to this problem of femicides as gender-based violence against women. Let us go to the next slide. So with respect to the mandate, first step is really collection and publication of femicide data that should be comparable. And currently we do not have such comparable data. For that reason, it's extremely important that UNODC, UN Women, Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women are now coming at a point of understanding that this new statistical framework for collection of femicide data will provide at the global and regional levels for the first time possibility to have comparable data on intimate partner femicide, on family-related femicide, and other type of femicides. And it is extremely important because now we will have possibility to see what was mentioned, 44 women killed in Spain with respect to intimate partner killing in relation to killings, for example, happening in Croatia, 16 to 17 women per year. With respect to number of females in the country, we can see absolute numbers, and we can see relationship between intimate partner killings when we are speaking about women and men. Because if we are looking at intimate partner killings and men victims of such killings, we will see that women are more than 80 to 90% of victims of intimate partner killings in a context of intimate partner killings. So the next step, what is addition and what is real mandate of Femicide Watch, is to analyze and research femicide cases to determine shortcomings at the national level. So this Femicide Watch should look at all cases that are happening in the countries in order to see what are those shortcomings. And the main mandate will be to recommend measures based on the human rights framework, based on CEDAW Convention, General Recommendation number 35, Istanbul Convention, and other regional instruments to prevent femicide and also to hold remembrance. And could we go to last slide?
Por favor, ¿alguien tiene Ramiro? Por favor,
es que nosotros recomendamos que sean
perdón,
en Europa porque el transporte es más barato. Ahora, si ellos quieren escoger ellos tienen que pagar.
Ramiro, por favor, micrófono apagado. Gracias. Okay.
So just last slide to To shorten up, my last report was taking stock of a Femicide Watch initiative. Also, Femicide Watch as a preventive body was supported by Beijing Plus 25 regional meeting that we had in Geneva. Also, CEDAW General Recommendation 35 also supported Femicide Watches. And now for the next step, I'm very glad that Crime Commission will now be in charge of really collecting femicide data, and I hope that UNODC and Crime Commission will each year produce comparable femicide data under this new statistical framework. In addition to this, that countries will also develop under Femicide Watch new knowledge how to prevent gender-based violence and femicides, and that they will send information to the Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women, because there is a database on a mandate's website of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights that is now collecting data on Femicide Watch, on data and everything that was established at the level of different states. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your intervention. Right now, I will pass not the floor, because it's going to be a video intervention by Mrs. Rashida Manjoo, that, as it has been mentioned before, was held the position of United Nations Special Rapporteur of Violence Against Women, its causes and consequences, a post she was appointed to in 2009 by the United Nations Human Rights Council. Please introduce the video intervention. Thank you.
Distinguished delegates, colleagues, and friends, thank you to the organizers, the International Association for the Advancement of Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges, and also Soroptimists International, for inviting me to participate in this side event on 10 years of anti-femicide campaigns. My first point is that sadly, despite decades of advocacy and activism on the issue of gender-based violence, its causes and consequences, forums for reflection such as this side event remain necessary. The numerous manifestations of violence against women and girls, whether in public or private spheres, including the ultimate act of such violence, which results in the death of a woman, has generated tons of reports and articles over the decades. Just in April of 2022, amongst others, the following headlines appeared in the media. The shadow pandemic of violence against women and girls is a global crisis, as if we didn't know that. UK femicide, the 125 women killed by men since Sarah Everard, and what it tells us about Britain today. Another headline, Counting Dead Women, the hard truth about Australia's domestic violence victims. And finally, Colombia's town spike in femicides is linked to armed groups. All these are issues that we have known about. These few examples of media coverage reflect a small sample of the widespread media coverage in all regions of the world, but usually in a biased manner to reflect high-profile cases involving certain categories of women, and also cases that are reported to the criminal justice system. Marginalized communities, including poor women, women of color, women with disabilities, women in rural areas, etc., are not necessarily given the same media coverage, and their lives and deaths often remain invisible. The second point is the side event also serves to honor and acknowledge the work of individuals and organizations in the struggle to name the phenomena of gender-related killings of women, or femicide, feminicide, as some people refer to it. Also to honor the work on conceptual clarity, including identifying manifestations and the violations that emanate, honoring the work on normative developments, including gathering data, and acknowledging the work around the provision of technical tools and assistance to member states and civil society organizations. One example of such efforts includes the early and continuing work of Latin American activists, academics, and jurists, who set the foundational work on the issue of feminicides. Their efforts have led to groundbreaking laws, policies, and jurisprudential developments in the region. During my tenure as the Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women, their work served to shape and influence my conceptual thinking, including on issues linked to state responsibility to act with due diligence. Thank you to our colleagues in the Latin American region for your work on this difficult issue. Thank you also to people globally who work on different aspects of gender-related killings of women and girls. Your work continues to render visible the invisible due to women's deaths often being linked solely to domestic violence incidents, and hence as a private issue which is not motivated by misogyny, patriarchal norms and values, myths, stereotypes, and expectations linked to sex, gender roles, and sexual orientation, amongst others. The work of the UNODC broadly and the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice in particular also needs to be acknowledged. A groundbreaking tool was the model strategies and practical measures in crime prevention and criminal justice response to violence against women and girls. Also, the early reports on homicide, which included disaggregated data on the deaths of women, have now evolved to a development of a separate report on gender-related killings of women. As noted in one report, the UNODC is committed to supporting member states to strengthen evidence-based policies and criminal justice responses that prevent and end violence against women and gender-related killings. On a personal level, I've noted that the UNODC is responsive to utilizing the reports emanating from the UN human rights system broadly, including the treaty bodies and the special procedures mechanisms. I would like to think that my 2012 thematic report to the Human Rights Council on gender-related killings resonated with the UNODC work on the homicide of women. My 2012 report addresses the historical aspects, conceptual evolution of the terms that I use to refer to the killings of women, the global trends and manifestations, international human rights law and jurisprudence, and some national level policies. Subsequent to that report, the UNODC motivated for a General Assembly resolution, and one was adopted in October of 2013, titled Taking Action Against Gender-Related Killings of Women and Girls. The most recent technical tool by the UNODC and other UN agencies, titled Statistical Framework for Measuring the Gender-Related Killings of Women and Girls, is a further indicator of the commitment by UN agencies to address a widespread and pervasive problem, with impunity for such crimes being the norm. Thank you to the UNODC for the work that you do, and importantly for the respectful and inclusive culture that you practice in acknowledging the work that other experts engage in. My third point is that words matter, language matters, conceptual clarity matters, data matters, and importantly, an anti-colonial lens matters. Unfortunately, we continue to see a particular narrative emanating regarding the use of terminology when describing the killings of women. Despite the General Assembly resolution, the singular word femicide is constantly used as if this is a homogeneous problem and should be described through the lens of one word only. Another challenge that we face is that there is a denial about the practice of normativity without legality within the UN human rights system, and the reality that soft law developments have proven to be insufficient and inadequate to effectively address the problem of violence against women and girls. A further problem that I've noted recently, that I've noted over the years, is the view that the Istanbul Treaty on Violence Against Women and Girls is an international treaty that could, with an amendment of course, accommodate the manifestation of femicide. And this would then solve the problem of the normative gap globally. The failure of institutional memory regarding the development of a European instrument on violence against women and girls underpins this discourse and reinforces the colonial mindset of superiority and imposition of norms on others without them ever having been part of consultations on the development of the Istanbul Treaty. The Istanbul Treaty is a European regional instrument and should be regarded as such. The UN does not have a specific legally binding treaty on violence against women as yet. An important discussion that has also risen in recent times is about the adoption of a treaty on femicide. This view ignores the reality that the death of a woman is the ultimate act of violence in a continuum of violence, whether in the home, the community, by the state, or at the international level, at the transnational level. Gender-related killings of women is not a new and novel development, but it is an indicator of the failure of states to protect against and prevent harm due to acts of violence against women and girls. Our focus going forward has to be on addressing the lack of accountability for acts of violence against women and girls, which ultimately ends in the deaths of women globally, with numbers growing. It's not just about the COVID epidemic. It goes beyond that. This has been an issue. The impunity and the lack of accountability are issues that have been raised over and over again within the international and regional human rights systems. Thank you for your attention and best wishes on the side event next week. Thank you.
After this presentation, which I really thank, I will pass the floor to Claudia Baroni so that we can have an overview of what UNODC is doing right now on that matter, that I know it is a lot. Claudia Baroni is an officer at the crime prevention and criminal justice office at the UNODC, and she has supported and led the intergovernmental processes that brought the adoption of several key United Nations standards and norms in crime prevention and criminal justice. So, Claudia, you have the floor.
Many thanks, and good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to all participants. And at the outset of my remarks, I wish to sincerely thank, through you, Madam Ambassador, the organizer, for opportunity to be part of this side event, which addresses a critical phenomenon, the one of gender-related killing of women and girls, or as it is commonly known, femicide. I'm particularly happy to join today's distinguished panelists, and particularly two former UN Special Rapporteurs on Violence Against Women, Mrs. Dubravka Šimonović and Ms. Rashida Manjoo, whose work has really been crucial and instrumental in advancing this issue at the international level. Having been part since the very beginning of the process that has led to the adoption by the General Assembly of the very first resolution on this topic, Resolution 68/191, it is with pride, but also with wonder on how quickly time flies, that I look back at the past decade. The picture which has been offered by the almost 10 years is not uniform and offers simultaneously some lights and some shadows, like a kind of chiaroscuro painting. But let's start with the lights and the positive development. I would say that firstly is the adoption of Resolution 68/191 itself, which, by the way, as it was already mentioned, was followed 2 years afterwards by another resolution on the same topic. Why it is important, the adoption of this resolution? First of all, as it was mentioned by Ms. Šimonović, because it provided that conceptual clarity, the conceptual framework that helped to understand a complex phenomenon. Secondly, I think that from a political point of view, it really represented an important recognition and commitment at the highest level, the General Assembly level, by the international community to address, this problem of gender-related killing of women and girls. I would say that also, when we're thinking about the positive development, we can also say that in the past 10 years, we have witnessed an increased awareness, knowledge, attention to the problem of femicide. And another important development has been, the important legislative progress that has been achieved in many countries of Latin America, which have adopted ad hoc legislation on the issue of femicide, criminalizing it. The negative aspect that still persists today, in my view, can be summarized in one simple consideration. Femicide still happens throughout the world at an alarming rate. According to the most recent prevalence estimate, which have been published last year by WHO, violence by a husband or male intimate partner remains the most widespread form of gender-based violence against women globally. UNODC global homicide data reveals the lethal nature of such violence. In fact, women account for 6 out of every 10 homicide victims killed by intimate partners or other family members. As it was already mentioned before, it means that a woman or a girl is being killed by someone in their family every 11 minutes. Of course, as we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic has made matters worse. Although global data on the impact of lockdowns on gender-related killings are patchy and still inconclusive, staying at home clearly did not mean staying safe for many, many women throughout the world. As you may all remember, the Secretary General of the United Nations used the terminology of shadow pandemic when referred to the issue of gender-based violence. The pandemic has further reduced access to essential police and justice services for women, with a serious impact on already vulnerable survivors. Movement restrictions and other measures interfere with the availability of police, prosecutor, judges, and legal representatives. These difficulties, added to an often already considerable backlogs in criminal justice system, as well as existing obstacles due to gaps in criminal law and procedure, gender stereotypes, victim blaming, and insensitive and inadequate responses of institutions and professionals. Therefore, it is more than ever necessary that a renewed effort is made and attention is paid to urgently improve and strengthen the criminal justice capacity of countries to prevent gender-based violence against women, including its most extreme form, femicide. In this regard, I wish to recall the set of UN recommendations to prevent, investigate, prosecute, and punish gender-related killings of women and girls, which were adopted by member states in Bangkok in 2014 by an intergovernmental expert group meeting, and then which were presented to the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice in 2015. This recommendation provides countries with the practical and articulated guidance on how to more effectively prevent and combat gender-related killings of women and girls from a crime prevention and criminal justice perspective. And after my intervention, I will put in the chat a link to access those recommendations. There, I will share the link for the recommendation in English, but they are available in all the 6 UN official languages. I wish also to recall another important milestone that has been achieved this year as related to the issue of data collection. As it was already mentioned by Mrs. Šimonović, this year, at the end of February, beginning of March, if I'm not wrong, the UN Statistical Commission has endorsed a statistical framework for measuring gender-related killings of women and girls, which has been jointly developed by UNODC and UN Women. And this, of course, now will provide member states with a statistical definition of femicide and will help to record and process the necessary data and count and compare national and global trends. I'm also very happy to inform you that later this week, on Thursday, if I'm not wrong, at lunchtime, there will be a side event to present this new statistical framework. So I would like to invite all the participants to also join the side event. But we cannot and we must not stop here. Throughout our work on crime prevention and criminal justice responses to gender-based violence against women, UNODC supports the implementation of the remaining 2014 recommendations, which deal with investigation, prosecution, and holding perpetrators accountable and providing support and services to victims and survivors. UNODC, in fact, supports member states in closing legal loopholes and eliminating discriminatory rules and procedure by providing legislative assistance and legal advice to review legislation based on international standards. We are also working at enhancing victim-centered responses to gender-based violence by developing and conducting capacity building programs for police, prosecutor, judges, and other criminal justice professionals. We promote also specialized and coordinated approaches through the development of standard operating procedures on coordination mechanisms for all institutions in the criminal justice system chain. To achieve our collective commitments to prevent gender-based violence against women, including femicide, we also recognize the importance, and this was already mentioned by both Ms. Nieto and Ms. Manjoo, the importance of the partnership with civil society and grassroots organizations. We work together with those organizations, not just for global advocacy, but for effective technical assistance at country level to put the rights and needs of survivors at the center of our interventions. To conclude, Madam Ambassador, the past 10 years have shown us that important progresses can indeed be made in preventing one of the most horrific human rights violations for women and girls, femicide, but that still a lot needs to be done to eliminate this phenomenon. The framework provided by the United Nations with its two General Assembly resolutions, with the specific recommendations for the criminal justice system adopted in Bangkok in 2014, and with the new statistical framework, they provide a solid, comprehensive structure to address gender-related killing of women and girls, but stronger efforts are needed at the political, operational, and resource level to finally put an end to femicide worldwide. Many thanks for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Baroni, for your intervention. And I will now give the floor to Linda Witong, who is advocacy consultant and Soroptimists International United Nations representative in Vienna. And she is also a 32-year she has also a 32-year career as a prosecutor in California, and she has been dealing with this issue for quite a long time. So thank you so much for participating today here in this side event. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador, for your very kind words. It's an honor to be here. Can I please have the first slide? Okay. I'll just proceed then with talking without the slides. With respect to what I'm going to talk about, it's going to be basically two things. It's been taken decades for us to recognize that one of the ultimate predators is serial killers who kill women and girls, not because of their relationship, not because of what they do for work, but simply because they are women and girls. Ted Bundy is an outstanding example of that. He himself said that they were looking for women as prey, as part of their hunt. It was a key component for his fantasy and often just as fulfilling as the crime itself. He described killing women and girls as a hobby. This is what we are all as a world dealing with in one nasty aspect of this type of feminist homicides or femicides. I wish I could show you a picture of him because he looked very, very handsome. He was very bright, as many of these serial killers are who hunt women and girls. And he is believed to have killed up to 100 women and girls throughout the United States. We think, had a revenge against his first girlfriend who, oh, here we go, who, next slide, please, who he had broken off in rather a bad way. While most of his victims were between the ages of 15 and 30 years old, and many of them were college co-eds, he was also killing young girls as young as 12 years old and 13 years old. Next slide, please. His unique combination of charm, good looks, and his keen intellect made him a very effective and prolific serial killer, almost a perfect killing machine. I would liken him to being a shark. Once he used a particular method, or he actually perfected a particular method where he would go even in a public space and he would entice women to help him because he was either in a cast or somewhat disabled. They would go to his car. He would then bludgeon them, quickly push them in the car, which had no handle in case they remained conscious, to escape. Next slide, please. He also would use authority, a false sense, to give them a false sense of security, and again, lure them near to his car and then get them in the car and then take them to a place of safety. Next slide, please. He would often either revisit the disposal sites to have sex with the decaying corpses. He is an example of many serial killers who possess and want to possess the women's bodies even after they have, or girls' bodies, even after they have killed them. He, as many other serial killers, kept souvenirs or trophies from his crimes. They served to sustain or refuel his violent or sexual fantasies. When asked why he took Polaroid photos of his victims, which in our area, we've seen a number of that to be the case, he said, quote, "When you work hard to do something right, you don't want to forget it." Next slide, please. The other serial killer who preyed on women and girls in the hunt, so to speak, we called him the co-ed killer. You can see from his size that it wouldn't take much for him to subdue a woman or girl. He started as a teenager when he killed his grandmother, as he just wanted to see what it felt like to kill grandma. When his killings began, he's one of the rare examples that we found where he was one of the few modern serial killers to have actually committed matricide as well. Next slide, please. And that happened when he was testifying. He said, "I killed the victims because I wanted them for myself like possessions." But he also ended his spree when he killed his mother and her friend, her female friend, because she had been the source of his rage for years and years and years. She kept him locked in a basement where he started to dismember dolls. And he practiced that once he applied that technique to women and girls. He actually talked to us about burying a victim's head in the garden under his mother's window as, quote, she always wanted people to look up to her. And when he was asked about his view of women, and to me, this is such an example of the hate that these men had for women and girls. He said, well, one side of me when I look at a woman is, whoa, what an attractive chick. I'd like to talk to her, to date to her. The other side of me says, I wonder how her head would look on a stick. Next slide, please. His victims, he said rather candidly, represented not what his mother was, but what she liked, what she coveted, what was important to her, and he was destroying that. Next slide, please. Examples of other serial killers who preyed on college-aged women or other vulnerable victims were, I've listed the names in my slides. They either focused on, again, college educated, many of them focused on girls, many of them focused on older women. Next slide, please. The dating game killer is another famous serial killer. His name is Rodney Akala. He was believed to have committed a total of maybe 130 killings. He joined a group of approximately 20 serial killers that I'm aware of that lured women. Again, we're not talking about women who were domestic partners. We're not talking about women who were in specific dangerous types of work. He, again, was such a good-looking man that he would lure them by saying, I can take great photographs of you. And unfortunately, when these beautiful women met with him or arranged to have a photography date, that was the last the world ever saw of them. Next slide, please. He, again, also kept trophies. When they went to his locker, they found hundreds of photos, which we are still in the process of determining who they may represent. It is not uncommon, again, for them to take pictures of their victims after death, especially. It's sort of like I would call a modern day serial killer scrapbook. Next slide, please. The progress that we've made, and this is really important, in bringing these animals to justice, in bringing justice to their victims, has been tremendous. We are now in the process of including touch DNA, of including bite marks, which have led to the downfall and conviction of Akala and other serial killers. Next slide, please. What does the future hold in terms of closing unsolved homicides? Touch DNA, otherwise known as trace DNA, is a forensic method for analyzing DNA left at the scene of the crime. You can take a couple of molecules at this point. It only requires very few samples from skin cells that have been touched or casually handled by a suspect, and it includes footprints. We also now have forensic anthropologists who are creating drones which would enable investigators to help them locate human remains. We also have DNA phenotyping, which can determine, and this is really exciting, what a suspect physically would look like, including their hair, their eye, their skin color, and predict their age and their biological background. Next slide, please. I foresee the way that our science is going. I may not live to see this, but I foresee that in a period of time, we will be able to take a small smattering of a DNA and give you a picture of what that suspect looks like, the way that we're going in our accomplishments. We have now biosensors for fingerprint analysis that not only identify a suspect, but also provide data, including what medication they may take, gender, and even their lifestyle. We have geolocating, which helps us locate a suspect or a victim using stable isotopes of water. This can determine where they originated and where they've been. It can also recreate a path that the suspect took through other methods and determine the number of people who were even present. They're also now working on forensic psychology, which could trace pollen, spores, grains, or seeds to identify where a suspect is or has been. Next slide, please. Digital vehicle forensics, as I think you may already know, enable us to gather data and determine their destination, routes, favorite locations, because it is not uncommon for serial killers who are hunting and killing women as prey to bury them and revisit the scenes. Physical fit is another exciting invention. It matches and assembles bones in order to identify a victim when the only evidence might be burnt or in fragile, i.e. it's been in the ground for a very long period of time. 3D technology is used to map the exact dimensions of these bones and to replicate the pieces using a 3D printer to see if the pieces fit together without handling the fragile evidence. This has been a very valuable tool. Finally, we are also using investigative genetic genealogy. I imagine that you have read about that in determining who a serial killer really is. The Golden State Killer is an example of that. He focused on women, but he also killed men in the process. And he was a very, very, fortunately, unusual serial killer because he actually broke into people's homes to do this. And he would tie up the men and the women. And of course, he would focus on the woman first and kill them, rape them, kill them, and then kill the man. We got him because of the genetic, what we would deem as the genetic genealogy analysis. We also now are able, because of touch DNA and other DNA analysis, to look at a sample, and if there are a number of samples in there, we can actually separate and identify them. So if there's been more than one killer hunting down women and girls, we can identify each killer. That concludes my presentation. I thank you for your time and your patience.
Thank you very much, Linda, for this very impressive presentation based on reality of serial killers and that they really, epitomize hate for women and girls. We have very a few time left, so please, I kindly ask you to limit your presentations to the 7 minutes that we agreed at the beginning of this when we organized this side event. Right now, I'm going to pass the floor to a message by Rita Banerji, who is an author, a photographer, and gender activist, and founder of the 50 Million Missing online campaign to raise awareness about female femicide in India. So, Rita? Yes, I know.
I'm Rita Banerji, founder of the 50 Million Missing campaign on India's female genocide. When I founded the campaign in 2006, the closest estimate of the number of women who could not be accounted for in the census was 50 million, hence the name 50 Million Missing. Now, I knew even at that point that that number was not going to stay at that, and that most likely it would go up as it had over the last century. We have a census every 10 years in India, starting from 1891. And every census, we have seen an increase in the number of women who have gone missing from the country, who could not be accounted for. The most recent census, 2021, was not conducted. So the number that we have right now of the number of women who have been eliminated from the country is 68 million. That's based on the last census, which was in 2011. And what 68 million actually means is that 20% of women in the country have already been eliminated. And when you consider that India accounts for 1/5 of the global human population, the implications are even larger. Another issue that the 2011 census reveals that is extremely important to take note of is that that there is a shift away from sex-selective abortion. The government has always tried to implicate the child-sex ratio, which is the ratio of girls and boys between what they say the ages of 0 and 6 years. Now, what the government says is that is what accounts for sex-selective abortion. But what the government used to do there was it used to put the sex-selective abortion numbers along with all the deaths at birth and after birth up to the age of 6 together, just to lump it together. And that in effect was one way of actually concealing the actual numbers of femicides, that is the killing of the targeted killing of girls at and after birth up to the age of 6 years. And it was only recently that in the last data that the government finally released that breakdown in 2014 or 15. But the actual number of sex-selective abortions is less than 1 million. It stands at about 955,000. But even that number, 955,000, is it accounts for both the sex-selective abortions and the girls who are killed at birth and after birth up to age 1 year. Okay, so this. Even that breakdown, I believe, would reveal that most of the deaths happen after birth. But what is important here is that most of the girls who are killed in that child sex ratio, that number that the government puts out, 94% of those girls are killed between the ages of 1 and 6 years. And what is significant about that is that a lot of women in India, they go home to their parents' homes for the birthing of their child, and when they say when it's a girl, many of them are actually reluctant to go back. They usually go back within 2 or 3 months, but some of them think that if they wait till the child is 1 year old, then she is less likely to be killed. But that is not true, because we see that 94% of girls are killed between the ages of 1 and 6 years. So it is extremely important for the government to address this, and for global media and research to address this. What we are seeing is mass femicide, and this in addition to what I had presented at the Vienna Femicide Conference on the 6 forms of femicide. It is important to note that when we are talking about the 68 million missing women, we are not talking about sex-selective abortions. We are talking about the targeted killing of girls and women after birth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rita. Before I give the floor to our next panelist, I also would like to thank the number of states that have sponsored also this side event. I mentioned before the civil society organizations involved. I would like to mention right now the states, which are Mexico and the government of El Salvador and Spain. And now we'll give the floor to our next panelist, Claire Laurent, who works right now as program officer with CARE Austria, and who has done a lot of advocacy work with researchers and activists from around the world to bring the issue of femicide to the attention of UN member states and convince them to adopt resolutions. So please, Claire, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, so I worked with a lot of peers of mine, and together with Michael Platzer, with ACUNS at the time, now UNSA, to work on femicides. I'm really happy to be here. I have good news. A lot of what I wanted to say has already been said, so I won't repeat that. For me, looking back at these last 10 years, it's been very interesting and empowering to see how much has been done. I think that equally there's a lot of frustration that things are actually not happening at the pace we'd like for things to happen. And I will really just stick to two things which I thought would still be really important to happen if we want things to change more quickly, if we want to see a world where we don't have to open the newspaper and see women and girls who have been killed. So I think one thing that is good but frustrating at the same time is that we all know what has to be done. I mean, Rashida Manjoo mentioned it. There is just this amount of evidence, this amount of publications, of learnings from different activists, civil society organizations, researchers, academics, UN agencies, on things that we could do to actually prevent these killings from happening and to prevent gender-based violence. And when you look at the recommendations of any of the publications that are being published these days, for me, they scream for two things. First, it's money. We need money to be able to work, to achieve successes, to bring about change. I mean, when you look at the business world, they know that investments are needed for greater wealth. And it's exactly the same if you want to bring about change. We need investments to be made to make sure that things are changing. And Elisa, what you were saying about what is being done in Spain was really interesting. And I think that's a really good use of the money of the states to really make a change in the lives of the women in Spain. And the second thing that it screams for is social norms change. So I think we are really good at protecting survivors. We are working on prosecution, but the root causes are still here. And we need to change discriminatory social norms. Otherwise, it will just keep happening and mistakes will always be made. And I think the people in power who influence policies, who make decisions on budgets, who influence community decisions, they know what we want. They know the evidence. They know what is being published as well. But not all of them seem to really understand what we're talking about. And at CARE, for instance, we really work on changing also social norms. And when we do that, we always start with ourselves. So we start with our staff. We then bring power holders at different levels on board to have that crucial reflection at an individual and institutional level about the social norms, the glasses, if you want, that we put on every day and influence our decisions and how we think, etc. So I think this is a really important point. And with that understanding, we can better understand the emergency we are facing, and we can make better decisions. And then my last point would really, for institutions, the institutions we're all working for, the states we're working for, we also have to look inward because we don't work as efficiently as we would want to. There's still things we can improve, processes that we can make more flexible to make sure that we achieve change more quickly. When I think one of the strengths of the work we did 10 years ago with all my peers and the students and the student that I was, is that we were naive enough to push for what we believed was an emergency and did not stop when faced with some of the bottlenecks of the systems we were facing. So I think we as practitioners, academics, diplomats, politicians, we have to be naive enough again to believe that we can actually also reform these systems and structures to the better. I think we owe it to the women and girls who are not with us anymore. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Claire, for your presentation and your ideas, which I totally agree. I mean, if you want to have a policy, you need to have the resources in order to back it, and all your comments, which I found really interesting. And now I will give the floor to our last panelist today, Alvazzi del Frate, who is the chair of the Alliance of NGOs on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, and who has a vast experience in global studies on crime prevention and criminal justice, with a special focus on gender-related matters. So, Anna, as an expert, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you. And obviously, I am fully aware of the time. So thank you for this discussion. Really, we went through the amazing work that has been done during the past decade. The effort was to reduce and prevent femicide. And the work that was done really was mostly through increasing knowledge on the extent and the characteristics, how it happens. We know much more now than we did then. And this is a very, very important starting point, I would say. We also gained knowledge on the fact that femicide is a type of crime which persists even when other forms of violent crime decrease. We have the paradox of some countries where we see that the trend of homicides goes down, but femicides increases because it's something, a different phenomenon than the type of violence that occurs, for example, gang violence. So we really know that we have to study more. We need to study more the role of firearms, for example, in femicide is still to be explored. We have to go broader. To prevent femicide, we have to work more effectively on the prevention of all forms of gender-based violence. And all discriminations, all forms of hate crime. And of course, we have to work more on domestic violence. So at the Alliance, we are hosting a working group that deals with gender-based violence as non-state torture. And we have organized a side event on this topic that will take place on Thursday at 1:10. And the issue is better explained in a written statement that we have submitted to the Crime Commission that you can find at this link that I put in the chat. So in this very short statement that I'm making now, aware of the time, I would really like to connect the discussion on femicide to this broader area. It is an area that comes at the intersection of criminal justice, international law, human rights. So it touches on the Vienna discussion, the New York discussion, the Geneva discussion. So it's something that also for the diplomatic level may be very important, very engaging, and indeed our aim would be to further mobilize the attention of member states on the potential of considering gender-based violence as a form of torture, and to focus on its seriousness and increase the prevention of all forms of gender-based violence, including the lethal ones that is femicide. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna, for your words. And before I have to call off this meeting because we have run out of time, but I'm going to give the floor to Michael Platzer in order for him to say a few words if he wants, because he couldn't be with us at the beginning of the meeting. So perhaps he would like to say a few words right now. So Michael, please.
Yeah, I thank you very much. I mean, you made this thing a very special event, and I was very impressed with all the knowledge that we have gained, but sadly, the numbers of deaths still occur. I was very interested in Linda's remarks about the DNA and so forth that you could do for a rape scene. I'm involved now with the horror atrocities in the Ukraine and the rapes and so forth, and I would wonder whether any of that technology could be transferred to the Ukraine, where we have over 1,000 women who have been raped. And we need to know who they are. Everyone who was with us at the beginning, the Šimonović, Rita, of course, Alvazzi, we really come a long way, I think. I mean, it's really been the way the resolution was pushed through by basically activists. Member states did go along, and UNODC started a program, but it came from you young women who were still active, which is great. Unfortunately, we have a problem, and we may have it for another decade, but I think we have to keep at the UN to make sure they're doing something. Talk is cheap, action is what's necessary. So we have a new issue issued yesterday. I don't know, can my camera see something? Can we get rid of that? Yeah. You can see the camera. There are copies available here in Vienna now, and you can get them through myself or Urania. And some of the originals are on the back cover, and some of you are also featured in the actual content. It's one of our largest issues, so please try to call us, and we'll foot the bill for the postage. Thank you all for this wonderful adventure, nostalgic in a way, disgusting in another way, and yeah, you've done great. And I think we will try to record it. We have recorded it, and we'll make it available on our website. And perhaps we'll try to pick up some of the things and make another issue of femicide. And by the way, we pushed that word. It was very hard in the first discussions to get femicide accepted when everybody wanted to have something very neutral. Not so there is a power of the word, and that is femicide. Okay, guys, thank you all for coming with me on this pretty tough journey for 10 years. Okay, keep it up.
So thank you, Michael, and thank you to all the panelists for the contribution. Each one with in their responsibilities, with their point of view, the work they have done, their experiences. And as we said before, there's a lot of work to do. And I think we are all in the same boat right now. And we are striving, all of us, in the same direction, each of us in our different responsibilities. And I think there is a strong commitment there. And we have to make it work. I mean, we have to really eradicate this crime, which at the end is the most cruelest expression of the lack of equality. So keep on the good work. And well, we will see each other here in the United Nations in other meeting or side event. Thank you so much. Bye.